Welcome to the Geek, the Nerd, and the Tangent. Get ready for a topic of passion this week as we discuss adaptations for our main topic. We're also joined by Matt's sister, Amanda. Thank you for joining us on the Geek, the Nerd, and the Tangent. We talk about geeky things, nerdy things, and we go off on tangents.
And hopefully to brighten your day.
I enjoy our little dance-off when the music plays.
Yeah, some great music. I love the organ in it.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I'm Brett.
And I'm Eric.
I am Matt, and today we have a special guest. We are joined by my sister, Amanda, who I think will be a great addition to the conversation about adaptations.
Yeah, because she's a school teacher.
Hello.
She's well-read. Right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking
Depends
today.
on the genre. I teach 5th grade, so it only goes up to a certain point.
Hey,
You're
some
smarter than a 5th grader then.
Well, the qualifications are only that you're just that much smarter than a 5th grader to teach them. But we know you're smarter than that. But well, I think today
Sometimes.
these two might have some inside jokes that Eric and I will be like, we don't understand.
I don't know about that. We've had a falling out in the last couple of years.
It's true. We no longer speak.
Is this a reunion episode?
Oh, this is
The
like
reunion episode.
we're gonna get
as we
down
talk
to
about
it.
adaptations.
Get down to it. Maybe the whole separation was because of an adaptation. Matt loved one thing, Amanda hated something.
Yeah,
or
I
the other way
love
around.
the Twilight adaptations so much, and she was so mean about them.
It's true. He passionately adores them.
Yeah. Whew, it's Twilight.
We'll
All
have
right,
to talk
so
about that.
so
Nope.
we have a lot of stuff to dump on you.
Twilight may come up today.
Yeah, it is adaptation. Yeah.
And you got to talk
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
bad
Yeah.
things, too, not just good ones.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll get there.
Before we get into the main topic, we have some random things to talk about.
It's time for the Random Roundup.
Pop goes the whip. All right, so Eric, let's start with you. What do you have?
Well, first of all, I want to mention I'm not sleeping through this today. The energy is
Eric is wired today.
flowing through me.
He's sucking Brett's energy, everybody.
Yeah, he's feeding off me.
He's really excited.
It's
to
kind
have
of
Brett
like-
back.
I'm a feeder person who feeds off energy.
I do feel a little insulted that he felt like because it was just me, he didn't have to have energy.
No,
last
I
week.
don't know. I don't know. It was weird last week. My mind was.
You were kind of messed up last week.
No, I was. But today I'm ready.
I listened to last week's episode, and I was thoroughly entertained. And Eric was a little more calm, but actually he came up with some good comments. And sometimes I do agree. I like explosions too, but explosions with a good story because the explosion has to have a reason to happen.
It does. All right, so my random roundup is not about explosions, but it's about talent. So I've been watching America's Got Talent lately, and I think the show is inspiring. These people come up, they do their talents, they get judged by these world-class people, and I don't know. I like Simon. I mean,
World
Simon.
class.
I mean, Simon's
They're
a
just celebrities
they're
that need
celebrities,
work
but-
to do.
I don't know if you would describe Mel B as world class in any circumstance.
All right. Well, I think
Well,
Simon
she-
at least has credentials.
She's been on hit
she's
records.
world known. She's
Yeah.
worldwide known, but
And they've had some other judges throughout times that have a little more credentials too.
Don't you
But-
think it's interesting that she goes by Mel B and there's not another Mel that she needs to compete with because she's not in the Spice Girls anymore? You know, they're not a thing, or are they? I don't know.
Nope, they're not.
I'm not a
I don't think
speed.
so.
No, but with it, I just was excited about people willing to share our talents. You know, like us. I mean, I don't know, because we can just get up. It's cool how we can do this now in our day and age where people can share their talents anywhere, anytime.
Or share their lack of talent.
Yeah, that's also true. But they still get hits on like YouTube. People are still making
No,
a
yeah,
common sensation.
I agree. I've really enjoyed listening to your podcast. So
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
That makes one person aside from Eric. I guess that's two. Eric and Ag. Oh, by the way, I should say that I refer to my sister as Ag. I know that's weird. Her name's Amanda. When we were kids at my grandma's house, I looked at her one day and I just decided her name would be Agnes. And then ever since then, that has been the trunk of the tree with many, many nicknames sprouting off of that name Agnes. Agnes, Agni, Ag, Agatha, anything you could think of that you could possibly do with that. So if I call her Ag, that's who I'm referring to.
Oh, and then you can just feel the love.
So glad you found that important enough to explain the entire scenario to the public who listen.
I mean, think about it.
Oh,
That
the
changed the
public needs to
trajectory of
know.
our relationship pretty much for the rest of our lives from that moment that I made that arbitrary decision.
Yeah, and the moment you decided to stick with it again and again and again.
So if you see comments on social media from Matt that say ag, we know that he's not talking about agriculture.
He's talking about
True.
Amanda.
It's pretty much always safe bet that I won't be talking about agriculture.
I mean,
Sorry,
you could
BK.
be, but
So that's our talent. Is us talking about random things, and we're happy about it. At least we don't have Simon judging us. Unless he listens to us at some time.
I don't know if we had Simon, the AGT judge, versus Simon, the American Idol judge.
yeah,
I think we'd be okay.
Yeah, it's true. Simon is a much nicer guy on AGT than American Idol.
AGT, is that a thing?
Yeah, it's a thing.
America's Got Talent.
Yeah.
Yes, it is too long of a name. So what about America's Got Talent? What are your thoughts?
I like them that they can come up, show us their act. These people, they can give them hope. And even if they don't come popular, at least they can get there and people see them and people are like, oh, I know those guys. I saw them at GT. And maybe they can become popular even if they don't win on that show.
it really is a brilliant show idea and a great source of entertainment, whether or not they actually succeed with their talents.
No.
It's a lot of fun to watch.
It is a lot of fun. I don't like the gimmicky nature of it sometimes. Like all the shows these days, it's so gimmicky.
Yeah,
Where
that
they
is.
just, like,
So,
it's just audience
explain.
manipulation. So, for example, there's one guy that has the worst act ever. He dresses as a caterpillar and comes out as a butterfly. And
Yeah,
it's
it
awful.
was
He's trying to
awful.
be the caterpillar from A Bug's Life, I'm pretty sure. And it's awful. He's in a
Yeah, it
sleeping
was.
bag dressed as a caterpillar.
It was
It's so
uncomfortable.
bad. But before that,
They tell
they
us
do his whole life story
Yeah.
for some reason. So you think this great thing is going to happen, but really they're just manipulating you into being let down.
Yeah.
Oh, they get
There's always gimmicky things like that. You
the-
get that on every reality TV show. MasterChef is one of those that we've been watching as well.
Oh, I need to watch MasterChef.
There's so much gimmick.
I like the
gimmicky
cooking.
nonsense.
Well, there was an evolution in the original run of American Idol. I don't know what it is like now that it's on a different network, but where at first, the first half of the seasons or whatever, they really focused on those train wreck things, and then as they went along to the later episodes, it felt like they were just showing people who could sing and not dwelling on that, because
They
that got
wanted to show the
really
talent.
annoying. You watch those first few episodes, it's like, I'm gonna wait until they've picked the people and then they're gonna be on stage, and that's why I prefer watching The Voice, actually.
Yeah.
Because
People are more accomplished right off
yeah,
the bat.
they get people who already know how to sing,
And that's what you
already-
want. I mean, I like the auditions, but I really want to finally get to the acts of what the people can accomplish.
I don't know. I didn't mind it that much. I think it's kind of fun to see the train wreck and everything. I didn't
Pants.
really love when the judges were outright mean to the participants, but it was fun to see what they were doing and what they thought was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the pants on the ground guy made it. He's still famous.
Yeah.
Pants on the ground. Pants on the ground. Looking like a fool with your pants on the ground. Something, something, something.
Oh
And
no, I could keep going.
and the other guy,
Oh,
the
man.
Asian guy,
Oh, what was that?
Oh, he was on the last episode, right?
yeah, I forgot what his name was, like
Yeah, he's been around too.
Tongan style or Gungan style
No, well,
or something like
no,
that.
no.
Definitely not Gungan style.
And not Gangnam Style. No, this is a different
Gangnam
guy
Style is
who
different?
was
Oh.
totally horrible, and then
Yeah.
he got so much fame from his bad performance on American Idol that he actually even recorded an album, and they
Yeah.
released it, and people bought it. I think mostly teenagers, but it was like this big novelty. You wouldn't listen to it other than you'd have to have a group of people to make fun of it, and then you'd be done with listening to it, and you'd never want to listen to it again.
That's for sure. Yeah, I did notice on this new season that now the ABC has bought American Idol, they hardly do any of those gimmicky performances. It's pretty much legitimate auditions now.
Oh, good. Because I think that's what people really want to see.
Yeah, but there's also an audience for those ridiculous moments, which is a little
William
silly.
Hung.
That
Was his name.
Yeah.
Did you just Google it?
Yeah, I did. William Hung. Okay. But validating Matt's comments. They were good.
Okay, cool. Thanks, man.
So that's my random roundup.
All right. So I got some stuff, and I went on the
Brett's got
cruise.
some stuff.
I asked my coworkers when I got back into work. I'm like, do I look more tan? And my one coworker's like, no, you look the exact same.
Yeah, you don't look tan.
And I'm like, either I was already tan from mowing the lawn,
That's it, Brett.
or I didn't get out. But I felt like I was out. I mean, I got sunburned all over, but that's in the shirt area where honestly it never sees the sun.
We don't want to see that, folks.
There are now pictures on Facebook. You can take a look at those.
I have a picture of me in this beautiful private beach. I'm sitting in the water hugging my wife, and you can see
with
the
his
sunburn.
8-pack abs.
Yeah, 8-pack abs. Now you just look at him and be like, ooh, that's what he looks like. Oh man. But it was this nice blue ocean, and you could see the ship anchored out in the distance because that we stopped at a private island in the Bahamas. I think the cruise line owns the island or something like that. So, but the beach there was really, really nice.
That sounds incredible.
Everybody just close your eyes while Brett gives you smooth talking about the beach.
No, that was actually my favorite part. There was a lot of good things, but it's the interesting thing about a cruise.
The food?
The food, but the first day, okay, we launch out of Fort Lauderdale. We're going to the Bahamas. We have a day at sea. When we were coming back, we were on the island of Nassau. Yes, we were on the island of Nassau. And when we left that night, we woke up the next morning in Fort Lauderdale, which only goes to show that day at sea was only for people to buy alcohol so they could make money and gamble. And
It's all about the booze.
And the way the boat is designed, you have to walk through the casino to get from one end to the other. So that's my beef with the cruise, because I don't gamble or drink. So,
Did you see a good
but
sunset?
I do
at
eat.
least?
What was that?
Did you see a good sunset?
A good sunset. I don't remember watching any sunsets because I was busy playing
He
Phase
was
10.
sauced.
I was sauced on ketchup from eating fries. Because, yeah. So I did eat some buffet food, but we had a appointment in the what am I trying to say? A reservation every night in the restaurant in the back of the boat, which is the only place where I felt motion, was in the back of the boat, and I could
Felt
order
emotion or motion?
That's what I thought at first.
motion, and I had some emotions.
the only
Just
place
numb
you could
the
go
rest
to
of the time.
Emotion.
the only place you could go to feel something.
No, the motion of the ship rocking, but and good company. My wife's family, they're great people, and we had a ton of fun. Yes, as we drift away into the sunset.
All right, I'll stop that. Sorry.
But
That was good music.
to get on the geek and nerd train here, the geeky stuff that happened was what I watched on the airplane back and forth from Florida, and I watched Spielberg, the documentary.
Oh.
I watched Justice League.
Oh, Justice League.
And then actually last night I did get the last half of Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Oh,
so I
good.
got caught up.
Time well spent.
Those are.
Yeah. So last night, that was it. Not on the cruise, but
Had you not seen Spider-Man: Homecoming
I
before that point?
had only seen the first half of it.
What did you think?
Oh, it was awesome. Spider-Man: Homecoming. They
was
they
so
did they did a great movie. I like Tom Holland as Spider-Man. He's the
fantastic.
best. He's by far the best Spider-Man they've done.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
Poor Toby.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was all right.
Toby, every time I see him, he just looks like he's going to cry.
And then I was talking to someone about how they said that they were watching Spider-Man, their first Spider-Man movie, Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man 1, if you want to call it that, and how it doesn't hold up like they thought it would when they were watching it again. And I think that movie, for its time, was very important and very, very it was like the comic book, those superhero movies had hit hard at that time. It's like, we are here. And I think that's first Spider-Man movie. You had the X-Men movies, and you've always had comic book movies throughout the decades. If you think of the Batman movies and things were the Superman movies in the 80s and stuff. But
It was a trendsetter.
yeah, and especially for Marvel, that was like, Spider-Man is here, and you're seeing Spider-Man do things that you only dreamt of seeing in a movie, kind of thing.
Yeah, the 2000s hit and technology boomed, and we're like, we can do Spider-Man now because we got cool technology.
Yeah, I feel like it was really good for the time, but standing the test of time, it doesn't really quite make it.
But Spider-Man 2 was a good sequel. I stand by
Yeah,
that.
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man 3, we can talk about that later. That's a train
I
wreck.
think we have talked about that.
Oh, boy.
But the Spielberg, the documentary, is interesting because Spielberg, he grew up.
I just like to make Brett do different tones. It's great.
He it's interesting. He has an interesting story, and I recommend watching that documentary. It does have clips from Saving Private Ryan that have, I mean, if you got issues with seeing actual war violence, but I think that it's important to watch that beach scene, the D-Day scene. I think is important for anyone to watch, because if that's what those guys went through, it was not like a cakewalk to go on. Like the confusion and fear and the gore and everything was real. So just to know that those people sacrificed so much for our freedoms, kind of thing. I do think that's important.
We salute you.
But yeah, I think it was a good, because Spielberg, I mean, we talk about Spielberg movies all the time, and he's like the inspiration for anybody after him. There's a whole band of filmmakers, if you're talking about especially genre filmmaking, that just Spielberg, it was their introduction to film, Justice League, it wasn't that bad. It was bad.
Yeah.
But everybody, see, I went into it with the expectation, and I went into the expectation is that everybody hates this, but hey, I can watch it, and I'm stuck in this airplane. At least I have a window seat.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's bad, but like you said, it's not as bad as you think.
And then when
Wonder Woman was excellent.
yeah, Wonder Woman was great. But back to Justice League, I was thinking about how these characters coming together is what we want to see in a good. You want to see that Justice League movie, and this brings them together. But the story is just very simple and light. I feel like they have to deal with the train wreck. I think a lot of the reasons why the movie's not good is they have to build off of Batman versus Superman, which I've seen half of that, and I don't care to see the rest of it. I already know what happens, so it doesn't matter.
Real bad.
So, and what I was the first half, I'm like, this is all over the place. It visually was really good looking,
Yeah,
though.
it was.
Yeah, it looked really good.
And unfortunately, you had
Doesn't
a director
matter.
who left halfway through. I mean,
for
basically
Justice
halfway
League.
through with Justice League.
He's just
and-
like, I just
But
can't do it.
I think Zack Snyder is he's visually he has an interesting visual style.
yeah, he does.
Lots of slow motion, lots of colors, lots of different things going on. But I don't think he's necessarily the right guy for the DC movies to take off or whatever. He tends to take things in a darker direction that maybe shouldn't go in those. I don't know. And also, I think he doesn't like Superman. He made the first. I think Superman there should have been a second Superman movie before we got into Batman versus Superman. Batman versus Superman was just a mistake
Yeah,
to
it
begin
was.
with. That should have been
It-
should have been made after they made a Batman movie and another Superman movie, and then go into it, because then the movie would have had to build off of more things, and they would have been forced into a better story, I think, and maybe they could have got rid of
They're
Zack
just getting
Snyder.
ahead of themselves.
Yeah, DC is restructuring.
They did get ahead of themselves, exactly.
They've Jeff Johns, who is over, he's gone. He stepped away. So DC's restructuring themselves, and so hopefully we get some good movies later. I mean, we have some coming out this year. Aquaman. Next year we have Shazam, and then Wonder Woman 84.
Wonder Woman 84. Is it really going to take place in the 80s?
Yeah.
I would like-
1984, the year I was born. All right, go, Matt.
I think
We've
Matt's
talked about
like,
this too long.
I'm done talking about Justice League. It's my turn.
Yeah,
All right. I'm going to keep this music on while I do my random roundup. I'm going to be short and quick because we are dragging, I think, a
we
bit on
are.
this random roundup. But I'm just going to say that me and Eric and I had an opportunity to go to the dump yesterday. and that was a good time. I had a lot of nasty stuff to throw away. And I managed to find Eric some gloves, made him throw the stuff out of the trailer for me. He got to smell the delights of the dump.
I'm glad it wasn't too bad because I have a horrible. I would have probably thrown up if it was bad.
So you've
Smelled
never
bad.
been there before, Eric?
No, I have not.
Oh, you
Me-
haven't been to the dump?
I've never been to the dump.
In
Ag
the-
and I have taken many a trip to the dump.
There-
Several trips.
There's a dump in Linden where we broadcast from. We're not really broadcast, podcast from.
That's right. That is correct.
And I've been to the dump a few times, and it's a unique thing. You can see all the garbage.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, growing up, our dad did property management, so you can imagine there's gonna be some renovation stuff. There's gonna be a lot of things like that going on.
Did you have a dump pass?
Probably, but yeah, living in Linden, they give you a dump pass. I'm pretty
So
sure.
I mean, like, did you get in for free, or did you pay?
Oh,
the
this time
$25?
we had to pay $8.
yeah, we have paid
$8.
$8 to take
It's because
our
we had
trash.
a big couch, so they were like, "You got any more big stuff in there, or just the couch? Just
And
the
then-
couch."
and
So
then
they
you're-
only charged us $8.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the
All right, Ag,
main
Chose
event.
music.
do you have anything though, real quick?
Kinda. I just was thinking about what to do for the random roundup, and I had nothing for the longest time. But tomorrow's Father's Day, and so I guess I just wanted to quickly say thanks to all the great men out there who do their best and everything. You guys did a special podcast for Mother's Day, honoring women and stuff, and I think it's good thing to honor the men too. I don't think they quite get enough credit in sort of a feminist pushing society, and thanks, great men.
Oh, I'm gonna say thank you.
You were welcome.
Right on.
I don't know. I'm glad you mentioned that because I was realizing it's Father's Day. We probably should have done a tribute to men's show. I mean, we could do it later, but
All
That
right.
would be a little, I don't know, self-aggrandizing.
Yeah,
I
but
guess.
I know,
Those
it-
are three men talking about how great men are. I mean, I don't know.
Well, we could talk about our dads because
that's true.
we all have
That's a
good,
good point.
good relationships with our dads. I think, even Eric.
Even Eric. What
No
kind
one.
of backhanded comment was that?
No, one time
Surprises everyone.
I was at Eric's house. We were 20 somethings, and his dad got mad at him for not locking the door, and I was like, that's a little harsh, but that no, Eric's dad's a great guy. He's a great guy. I'm nothing bad about him.
Yeah, he's awesome.
he just wants to be safe.
Yeah. All right.
Adaptations.
Woo! Okay, Matt, take it
Energy,
away.
energy. All right, I am excited for this adaptations
Yeah, we are.
topic. I think it's going to be a good one. I specifically brought Ag along for this because whenever I'm writing something, she's kind of the go-to editor for my stuff. I always run things by her because I think she has good ideas about what makes a good story and what makes horrible stories. And
Oh, thanks.
not to say that she's flawless because none of us are, but I think she'll have some great contributions today.
And
I
she's a
think-
school
I
teacher.
think she's great for this topic. Yes, we've established that already.
Oh, we have.
No,
I
you're-
don't remember.
You're good,
I'm
man.
not sure if we did on the actual.
Yeah, you did.
All right. So, what are some of your
I don't actually know.
examples of adaptations? Now, a lot of movies. I think Eric has.
First, I want to let's just establish the definition of adaptations, and I think we can build off of that. I think that's important. Then people can understand, this is the definition of adaptation. Now we know where we're going. So the definition of adaptation is the action or process of being adapted or of adapting or being adapted, and then adapt is to make something suitable for a new use or purpose, modify. So I think if we understand that, then we can understand where these movie makers are coming from when they take a book and try to modify it into a story.
And it doesn't have to be a book. Sometimes plays are
No.
adapted.
Or
Sometimes
video
short
games.
stories or video games. A lot of
Yeah.
things are adapted.
Well, yeah, they are.
And within that, all of the comic book movies are adaptations of one
the
form. And I think that as far, yeah, it's good. So,
Yeah, it's true. So an adaptation is basically you're taking it from one medium and you're taking that whatever it is that someone loved and you're transforming it to another medium, right? So books and movies are obviously very different in the way that they tell stories. Books, you're not visual in a book, generally
You have to
speaking.
tell.
You're descriptive. You're talking about it. You get inside people's heads more. You see, or you read the descriptions of the events and characters. In a movie, the ideal is that you visually perceive it and you don't have to be told, right? If it's a good movie, like the short for Incredibles 2, you don't have to say a thing, and the audience will completely understand what's happening in the movie.
Awesome.
Show don't tell is always a standard, like first thing you learn in, I don't know, writing and in movie making and everything is show don't tell.
yeah. When you're writing a screenplay, that's the first thing they say is like you don't write the thoughts of the people like directly into the screenplay.
Which, as a short tangent, I think a lot of directors and writers don't trust the audience enough to really do that. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to give a little more credit to the audience. I know they're trying to target multiple, education levels and all that, and that's great. But trust the audience that they can come away with the visuals, and you don't have to explain everything with words.
Yeah. So what are some good examples of good adaptations, or maybe we should just list adaptations in general?
I would have a list, at least ones I felt were good adaptations to me from what I've read.
Twilight's number one.
Nope. I have
What?
Hunger Games, Harry Potter, Ready Player One, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Tim Burton's, Matilda, Princess Bride, To Kill a Mockingbird, Lord of the Rings, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Lord of the Rings. Oh, did I say that?
You
Whoops.
sure did.
Ender Game, Princess
Enders.
Bride,
There are
Ender's
3
Game,
movies, though, so you can say it one more time.
Matilda, Princess Bride, Harry Potter. So those are some of the ones I felt.
Interesting thing about Princess Bride. Did William Goldman publish that before the movie came out?
He did.
Because
It was a book
He did.
first, but he worked on the screenplay.
Yeah, he did
wrote
work,
the
and I
screenplay,
think that's
too.
why it did so well. It was such a good adaptation because
Well, he's a good writer to begin
Yeah.
with. He's excellent.
he is.
Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. That was some good writing. That's a good movie. So when I think of adaptations, I actually think of Lord of the Rings a lot. And I think they did a pretty good job, but
Outstanding job.
But-
It was.
but there are some things in the book that you just can't translate to the screen. And when you're putting it all together, when you put the movie together, you got to follow Frodo's story pretty tight, I think. And when you juxtapose the adaptation of Lord of the Rings to The Hobbit, then that's when you're like, you see Peter Jackson have a really good adaptation, and then I didn't like the Hobbit adaptation. I don't think why do they need to split books into multiple movies when you have a tight story?
Yeah, the story was already there in The Hobbit.
The
It
Hobbit
was
needed to
one
follow
contained-
Bilbo. We didn't need to know about elves and dwarves falling in love,
Although I did like Evangeline Lilly in that. I thought she was good.
She
But,
did a good
I mean,
performance.
Peter Jackson. There was a quote from him, and I'm paraphrasing it, but he basically said he didn't know what he was doing. He was just kind of winging it the whole time. And
a very
it
expensive
because-
a
movie.
very expensive wing, and it made money. He made
yeah.
a lot of money.
And
off
I
that
own
movie.
all three.
Because he wasn't
the-
at first going to do The Hobbit. Is that why, you think?
Yeah, it was Guillermo del Toro,
Yeah.
I think.
Uh-huh.
Would
Yeah,
have been
it was.
interesting to see Guillermo del Toro.
And he was ready to do it. He had stuff. I was reading that he had things ready for it, but it just never had some issues with copyrights or
I think
something.
he ended up
and
on some other project or something.
He did,
Well,
but
the thing was taking so long to develop. He had even moved to New Zealand, and it was like a year or more, and
Yeah.
the movie was still not going on because of
I think it was with MGM.
MGM's issues and rights and stuff
Yeah.
for it, and so he just had to abandon it because he couldn't just sit on it
Yeah, and then
forever.
Peter Jackson came in like, oh, okay, we can finally do it. I'll do it, which is too bad.
Yeah, so I think that is a really good, stark example of a good adaptation versus a fairly poor one. And it's not because they lacked budget or resources. It's just because they overdid it. They overkilled the adaptation. They put source material that just wasn't there. They just made stuff up to make it more of an epic, which it wasn't an epic. You know, The Hobbit is a simple children's story of a hobbit going on this adventure, and that's what they should have stuck with, I think.
And they could have made The Hobbit into 2 movies and followed Bilbo, and I think, okay, this would have been good as long as you're following Bilbo. 3 movies, when they announced 3 movies, I'm like, 3 movies for The Hobbit?
What are they going to put in all that?
What's going on here? Like, from the beginning, it was kind of weird, and then, but I do think Martin Freeman was great casting for Bilbo.
Oh yeah, he was.
Yeah, he was excellent. So adaptations, I loved the adaptation of The Lord of the Rings. They really spent the time on that to figure out how to bring that to life on the screen. And if you read the books, they're very different. You know, the structure of them is very different. You know, they're not intermingled in the books. They're just, let's look at this story and then let's look at this story, right? And this one, it's you cut back and forth between the different stories, and it's all kind of a cohesive movement to the end. But the books aren't like that at all. The books are very poetic and very...
They're a musical almost.
Yeah, they are.
They are.
Like, there's a lot of those poems and songs and different things that adds to the depth of the world that Tolkien had built in the books, and you can go very, very deep. And the appendices of each book is like, you know, super long because he wrote a whole language and everything for the elves and everything like that. So, but the movie has to drive us forward. You always have to have a constant momentum. I mean, in a book you do too, but in a book you could take a sidetrack, visit Tom Bombadil, and then come back. You can do a whole lot more. You can do more in a book, honestly, but it isn't the same because it's a book. The movie is a visual experience, and in our culture, the movie is the height of storytelling. Whether that really should be is another argument, but that's just how it is in our American culture.
So let me ask you guys this. Why are adaptations so important to studios? Why is it that we always see adaptations? Adaptations have always been out there. Why are they reaching so hard to get adaptations?
Amanda, share us your thoughts.
I mean, I don't know, just off the top of my head, but I feel like it's really, first of all, maybe a matter of just being cheap and not wanting to come up with your own new story, but like, not really. I think at the core of it, it's just that people want to see the beloved stories that they know and love and have grown up with in a different way and in a visual way.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a money reason, right?
Yeah,
it's
I
always
agree
about
with
money. And if they have something that they know people already love, of course they're going to adapt it to film because it's going to bring people there.
And
They
the
try to
story's
be
already
safe
there.
that way.
And people already know the story. And so they're like, oh, I know that story. So it's safe. Because I think of original movies. The last original movie I can really think of is Tomorrowland by Brad Bird. And it didn't do well.
There have been some other ones.
I know
for
there
sure.
have, but there have been throughout the years. But one I think of one that was an original film that didn't do well.
But Tomorrowland has roots in adapting the Disney
section of Disneyland.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it's
which
still
is a really
rich-
strange adaptation
Yeah.
concept.
It's like Pirates of the
is.
Caribbean.
Yeah, but that first movie was excellent.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was.
yeah, it
That
was
was an
phenomenal.
amazing to take a ride and turn it into a movie.
Such a good movie, too.
The next
pretty.
3, I guess
Yeah.
4 movies were awful.
Not so great.
Awful.
They're all right. I enjoy
No,
them.
they're horrible,
I like
man.
a good pirate movie.
They're pretty
so
bad.
Yeah, but if you like the swashbuckling, whatever, but they're not good. Let's just get that straight.
The 2 and 3
Yeah, they-
went off the rails. I don't understand what they were doing there. When they came back to the 4th one and the 5th one,
The 5th one, so Monster Trucks and Pirates came out at the same time. And I was really shocked because I thought Monster Trucks was a better movie. You remember that movie?
Oh.
It's like the little monster that lives inside the truck.
No, I
yeah,
remember
I
watching
do.
trailers for it, and
Yeah.
I was thinking, I don't want to see that. That's just not my thing.
I didn't want to see it either, but I ended up seeing it with Chelsea and the kids.
Oh.
Much better than Pirates.
really, wow. Interesting.
We'll have to check it
I
out.
bet you
check it
Monster
out.
Trucks is an adaptation of some movie or book too.
It's an adaptation of Monster Trucks.
One of my favorite adaptations that I kind of wanted to bring up was Holes, because I don't know, like I just feel like they stuck to the book really well, except for the things that didn't, feasibly work in a movie. Like for Stanley being overweight, it would have been really difficult to have an overweight character lose weight throughout the movie and have him be thin by the end. So they just got somebody thin. But the things that they changed, I felt were either better or like respected the book and went along with it really well, or just were basically what was in the book. I thought it was a really, really good adaptation.
I think
I
that
could fix that.
and I think that's what makes a good adaptation is that they stick to the book enough, but they change it enough where you don't feel like they've taken away your beloved story.
Some stories are hard to adapt, though. And this is
Game.
like a money thing where they're like, yeah, Ender's Game, for example. The movie suffers from some issues. I did like the movie, but
Yeah, I liked
Yeah.
it, but
But
I
you
think it's
can't-
about as good as you get.
Can't
Yeah,
share
it-
Ender's thoughts. That's the whole thing.
yeah, and
of the
that
book.
was my thoughts. Is like this is as good as you could get for an adaptation because that book, you're dealing with a 6-year-old at the beginning. He's like super young, and you're getting into these thoughts. Totally an interesting psychological book, actually. The movie is just you can't. It's hard. You can't translate that to the screen directly. Kind of thing.
Yeah. So, what are some elements that make a good adaptation? I think Eric kind of started talking about this a little bit with his previous comment. I would say one of the keys to me is looking back on time, and you don't know it's an adaptation. So, for one really famous example of that is The Godfather. A lot of people don't have any idea that that's an adaptation at all. But it is, and it's fantastic, right? It's one of the major pop culture iconic films that's ever been made.
Yeah.
And it's an adaptation. Jaws, you mentioned Jaws is another one. People don't think of that as an adaptation. You think of that as this movie where Spielberg was getting his start. And it's this fantastic movie.
I feel like Jurassic Park is the same way. I had no idea that it was a book beforehand. It was a great series of movies.
Yeah, I mean, Michael
Well-
Crichton did have
Yeah,
those
mine-
books, and it was but it's a great example of an adaptation. They took
Yeah,
the
it
source material, but they made it cinematic.
Yeah.
I mean, I read Jurassic Park, and with it, there was a lot of mumbo jumbo about science, and Malcolm kind of gets on a high horse about it. Like, oh, well, this is wrong. And it gets a little preachy.
He does that in the movie, too.
Yeah, but it's not as
think-
bad.
but that's the
and
me-
I'm glad that they didn't get as. But then there were some other scenes that they took out that I'm glad they didn't really need. Like the whole first few chapters of the movie, the book is not even in the movie. And
Well, they put that little scene with the little mini dinosaurs and the little girl.
Yeah, and-
they took that out and put it in the beginning of that second movie.
Yeah, and so
Which
I mean,
started out well, but didn't end well in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what the Lost World book was like, but it was. Did Crichton?
I haven't read 'em.
Did he ever? Yeah, I haven't read them. I want to know how closely related to the production
he only wrote
the Lost World
Lost
was.
World because of how well the movie did. He wasn't going to do a sequel because Malcolm dies in the book, and then it's like, oh, I want to bring him back. So they kind of bring him back, like, oh, he healed from his wounds, and they blew up the island in the book. The island's just gone.
Oh. Well, I think that, like what Matt was saying, is if the movie's good and stands on its own and you don't know it's an adaptation, I think that's a good thing. Even if it's totally different than the book, if you make a good movie, I do like that. Now, I don't know how the author would feel about that, but...
Yeah, I mean, the author's always going to suffer some pain because you're going to have to cut and you're going to have to cut. You're going to have to combine characters. You're going to have to combine events, do all sorts of things to the source material. I think some other things that make a good adaptation are making sure you're not too faithful to the source material, honestly. And I know that sounds weird because a lot of times you hear that comment like, "Oh, it wasn't very faithful to the book. It wasn't the same as the book." it can't be the same as the book. It
No,
never
it
will be.
can't.
Like Holes is about as close as it gets, but that's such a short book,
And Princess Bride, I think.
and it's very cinematic. Yeah, Princess Bride was really close.
That book, yeah. Well, and it's good you have the
But
same
it's
guy
cinematic.
writing.
It's a cinematic book in and of itself. That's
Uh-huh.
the difference. You know, a lot of books aren't like that. You know, you can't just take, a Dickens book, and if you did it page per page, it would be the snooziest fest you've ever had.
Yeah.
You know, it just doesn't work. You have to add something.
You have to figure out in the book what the main story is, the bare minimum story, and then kind of build off that. I was in a writing class who was talking about adaptations. He's like, read the book, then put the book in the drawer, and then you write the screenplay without ever looking at the book again, basically, because it's like you can't. If you try and write page by page and try and get everything that's in the book, for one thing, the movie would be too long, and another thing is that the movie would not work. You can get to a slow point in a book, and that's okay. In a movie, usually slow points are very calculated in the form of the way you do the movie. In a book, you're so free to do whatever you want.
I feel like I agree with all of this to a point, but there's still my favorite adaptations like Holes, and I feel like Wonder was a really good book to movie adaptation, are the ones that stayed closest to the book and really respected the story of the book. Because like Matt was saying, there are a lot of books that you can't just go, it would be really, really boring to just stick with, page by page what happens. But a lot of times you put the book in the drawer and you go off on crazy rides that nobody wants to see. And so you got to have the right person doing the adaptation, and a person who really does have a respect for the story and what it should be saying and what it's trying to say, and not get lost in weird paths of, that just go off. Like, I can think of several examples.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you mentioned Holes and Wonder, because those are, they're more juvenile fiction, which is great. There's some great juvenile fiction.
Yeah, they are.
But I will also say that they're also usually simpler stories. Mm-hmm. They're not so complex. It's not adapting Lord of the Rings. It's not adapting, I guess, Game of Thrones, which I've not read or watched really, but it's not complex. It's a pretty straightforward plot that translates well to the screen. You make some changes here and there, but that's fine. But yeah. Anyway.
I'm going to bring up Twilight. That first Twilight movie, I had heard an interview with whatever the
There's
author
a child
was.
upstairs moving a chair if you hear that.
But they had some. You think whatever you think of Twilight, I'm not a big fan of the story in general, but that adaptation, they were talking about other ideas that were being pitched during the adaptation that were way way weird. It actually maybe would have been a better movie, for people, but all the Twilight people would have hated it because it wouldn't have been anything like the story that it was adapted.
Twilight made me feel so uncomfortable. I mean, I know probably in the book they talk about the feelings and how Bella feels about.
Oh, you feel uncomfortable if you read the book too.
The first movie, I felt like it was. I just felt like it was dogs just sniffing each other. The whole movie, just and it just made me feel because way they look at each other and the way I don't know. I just felt like it was just two dogs.
It is weird.
Smelling each other through the whole movie.
I think I do think that's an interesting.
Yeah, it's
interesting
a very,
review.
very dramatic teenage romance. I definitely kind of see where you're coming from, Eric. It's uncomfortable to watch for me.
Eric mentioned this adaptation, and I want to touch on this for a bit. Ready Player One. Did any of you read the book?
I'm reading it right now. I'm halfway. I'm almost 100 pages left.
I've been meaning to get
very,
to it.
very different from the
is.
adaptation. And in this case, it is such a good thing that they did it different, I think.
Yeah, you had to.
Because you had Spielberg, but this movie is not. It's very, very good as a book, and it's very, I think, gripping as a book. But if you put that book on the screen,
no,
it would be really boring.
It would.
It would just be like, oh, then he did this, and then he went here, But in this case, they took the core of the story. They made it a little more 90s nostalgic instead of just 80s, because pretty much the book is just 80s nostalgia almost.
Yeah, it is.
But they put in 90s, some 2000s. They put in some more mix of nostalgia.
And I think they had to get
You had to
what
be
you
more
had the
visual,
rights to put in
too.
there.
Yeah. You had to get the rights to things, but also just the way that they formulated the story. It was very. If you read the book, it is not the same story at all.
Interesting.
And I enjoyed the changes. Like the first task he does is just him playing some video game, but in the movie
Which would
it
be
shows
super boring in
Yeah.
a movie, right?
And in the movie, it's this awesome race, and it just showing the cars, and it's
And it's
visually that
still like a
was-
video game, but they're in it,
Yeah,
you know?
uh-huh.
And it's a good adaptation. They took the core of the story, what needs to happen. They didn't change the story, like the character arcs. The character arcs are pretty much the same. They just changed the context a little bit. So they changed what are the actual things that they have to do to get the keys. They changed those. They changed a bit of the pacing, but it was a well done adaptation. Spielberg did a really good job with it. Sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you just have to cut yourself loose. I disagree with the putting it in the drawer. I think you have to be if you're the person that has to put it in the drawer, I think you're not self-aware enough to know that you're basically copying the text, right? I think you need that reference with you. And I know you're using that as just it's just an example to say
it's extreme.
It's a principle that you're teaching there. You know, you got to put it aside and think about the medium that you're creating, but you do need that reference. You know, when you listen to Peter Jackson and Philippa Boyens and Peter Jackson's wife adapting, they're constantly going through that and saying, "Who can we give this speech to?" You know, at the end of Two Towers, that speech that Samwise gives. That's just so moving.
Oh yeah.
That I mean, they didn't know they were going to put that in there. I think they took it from somewhere else in the book, put it in that moment, and it was perfect. You know, so they're staying with this source material that's so beautifully written, but they're cutting it up. They're putting it with different characters. They're combining characters. Tom Bombadil isn't there, but he's kind of represented in the extended version with the trees. You know, and the growing and the trees are eating the hobbits and that kind of thing. But they did a great job, but they're using that source material. I need to stop talking so I can breathe.
I agree. I think you can't always just stick exactly to the book, and but there definitely needs to be a balance of, you know, going off on creative, you know, side paths versus, you know, I keep using that phrase, but respecting the story in the book for what it is. You know, authors usually work alone, and so it's, you know, I feel like pretty easy to, you know, make choices in your books that may not be the best choice, and that other people can come in and have a better idea. And that's something that I've seen happen in a lot of movies, and it's really a good thing to see. You kind of want to see stories get improved as you.
Do you have an example of that? I know it's hard off the top.
I'm still thinking of holes. Like, I read this with my kids every year, and we watch the movie and do like compare and contrast stuff.
So that
And
would
there are
make
just
sense.
a couple of
Why?
things that I feel like are better. Like, I think I don't think Stanley. Okay, so I don't know if you're familiar with the story, like any particular listener, but it's a boy who goes to this camp, and there's this warden who's kind of a jerk, and she's always saying, excuse me, you know, and in the end, you know, in the book, he doesn't quite get that like moment of justice, but in the movie, he has this last moment with her where he kind of gets back at her. And I mean, that's just the first thing that comes to my head. I know there's a better one that's not quite popping to me, but I liked that he was able to have that like resolution where he sort of stands up to the bully and gets to just, you know, say, excuse me to her, and it kind of comes full circle that way. But yeah, just that's the first one that comes to my head. But there are a lot, you know, a lot of times
I have an
where
example
they make better
of
choices
that.
from what was in the book.
Of the Matilda. I read the book. I saw the movie first and then read the book. And I thought there were some things that were going to be in the movie that are not in the book at all. Like Matilda, when she starts with her powers in the movie, that she destroys the family's TV and things. And in the book, they don't have that. And I really enjoyed having her more, because her parents are just so mean and weird. And you get a little more of her revenge against her parents in the movie than in the book, which I totally enjoyed more. And the book kind of just lets her parents do her thing. But in the movie, it shows a little more conflict that she has with her parents and them always just watching TV.
Yeah, I like when it's like kind of a collaborative improvement of the story.
Yeah, there's some really good adaptations out there. A couple that I want to mention are actually some Stephen King ones. So The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile, which I probably none of you have seen those. When I was a kid, since I couldn't watch rated R movies, basically, I would read the book. And so I'd get the book, and for some reason that was acceptable, but watching the movie wasn't. I still don't understand that because I'm pretty sure my parents bought those books for me or let me check them out of the library or whatever. But, I guess a book is somehow acceptable and a movie isn't. But they're very different books, but the adaptations are just outstanding. The Shawshank Redemption is one of the most beloved movies from the 90s, and The Green Mile, I don't know if that was late 90s or early 2000s.
It was late 90s.
But yeah, I mean, those are some great adaptations. Some other ones, I'm looking at a list right now. I got Fight Club on the list. To Kill a Mockingbird was one of the best adaptations I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Gregory Peck is Atticus Finch.
He is. I think of Atticus. I think of Scout. I think of those actors.
Yeah, they're perfect. But yeah, there's some really good ones here. Some that I disagree with, but it's got Lord of the Rings, of course. It's got Sense and Sensibility, which has Alan Rickman and.
Oh, I like that. That was a fun movie.
Emma Thompson and
I
Kate
never read
Winslet.
the book of Sense and Sensibility,
Sense and Sensibility was fantastic.
I like the
movie.
Pride and Prejudice. I like the Keira Knightley one. I know that Matt has
Boo.
issues, but I read the book and then I watched the movie. That's what I
just
did.
have to say, in general, I hate it when they do a period piece, but they make it feel like the time period you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Their styles feel a little bit too much like today.
Too modern.
It feels too modern, so you don't quite get that real period feel. Whereas there's other ones that are period pieces that stand the test of time because they really go to the costuming of that period and the hairstyles of that period. But if you watch like a period piece from the 70s, it's from the 70s, right?
Yeah, and that's
the same with the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice. I think that's the biggest issue I had with it.
and
Just
it's
felt
hard.
too modern.
Yeah, it felt like it was pretty much a cosplay. It just felt like it was taking place here, but it was just some people in some weird place that they dress differently.
That's lame. I don't like that. Yeah.
But you may feel differently, and that's fine.
But every movie is going to be a product of its time, one way or another. But yeah, you can be more hold to it, and this is a book that you'd want to hold to that type of thing. You look at something like Pirates of the Caribbean, where totally anachronistic all over the place, different eras mixed together.
But no one cares, right?
Yeah,
Right. There is a place for that, but
it's a
Sense and
fantasy.
thing is,
Sensibility is not that place.
It
Pride
doesn't
and
look like
Prejudice
the
is not
time
that
period
place.
you're in. Like Pirates
Yeah.
doesn't look like today.
No,
it
it
looks
doesn't.
like a different time period, so they can get away with being anachronistic.
Well, I only felt like in the Pride and Prejudice when she went to I don't know the name of Darcy's house or whatever, and she's looking at all the art that he has. That's where I felt like maybe I was taken out of. For me, that's where I was like, okay, this seems weird looking. But all the other stuff, I was actually fine with it. But now that you pointed it out, now maybe I'll watch it and be like, well, I still don't want to watch
Sorry if I ruined it.
the BBC 8 hours of.
So here's a
I
question.
like that one better.
Why do you guys think certain movies, certain stories are adapted so many times, like Robin Hood or King Arthur or anything William Shakespeare?
Well,
Why do you think we adapt those stories
Those
so
are
much?
stories that that are old stories that just keep on coming back. The test of time stories that have survived the test of time.
They're also a little open-ended, so if you think of Robin Hood, who's actually read the original Robin Hood? Raise your hand if you've read it. I've read it.
Their legend, is it like the original legend? Like, what is the original
Exactly.
Robin Hood?
Exactly.
There's
That's
just a
the
whole
thing.
bunch of
Like,
stuff.
what's the original?
Yeah.
You don't know. And so there's so many different. It's almost like there's legends of it, and there's so many directions you could take it because of that. I think that's the reason.
You think that's the same thing with King Arthur? I mean, because King Arthur is still a legend too, and there's so many. Because I was reading and I was like, saw another Robin Hood movie coming out soon, and I'm like, really, another Robin Hood? I mean, I think Prince of Thieves and the
Prince of Thieves wasn't that good.
I like
I mean,
Men
you
in
had
Tights.
Kevin Costner was awful.
It's one of those things where it's Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner's accent.
I mean,
oh,
my
man.
favorite adaptation is Men in Tights. I mean, because that was just funny. I mean,
It is funny, but I feel like we've still yet to see a solidly done Robin Hood movie,
I like-
so I'd like to see
There was
it
that
done.
TV show that was okay.
also my favorite
what about
Robin Hood
Ridley
is
Scott's?
Disney's.
I don't know what you guys said.
Oh, we're talking over each
Yeah,
other.
we did.
He mentioned
So,
Disney's
Disney.
the cartoon.
I love Disney's.
that
Robin Hood.
cartoon.
classic.
Is
Yeah.
good, classic.
Ridley
And then I
Scott.
was like Ridley Scott's Robin Hood. I actually haven't seen it, but was it?
I did see it was more of taking Robin Hood like they did with sort of took Robin Hood and made him more of a fighter. He was more of a knight, I guess. How do I describe it? It was more warish. It wasn't I mean it was like Robin Hood Begins, so he didn't really begin his thing against it was more showing him against war and
It's like his rebellion type thing, right? Something like that. I don't know. I'll have to check that movie out.
yeah. I gave a bad description on that of what it, but it was an interesting take.
I actually liked the new King Arthur.
Was it a more fantasy one?
It was an interesting one. It was let me see who did that.
Guy Ritchie.
Yeah, the Guy Ritchie version, and it had what's his name? He's in Nicholas Nickleby. He's in the biker show, the Sons of Anarchy. It's Charlie Hunnam, I think.
Was this the most recent?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was the most recent one. I think
Came
I
out
saw it
last
by
year.
myself. I don't think either of you were with me.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I remember. I was weary.
Oh no, I
going-
think you were going to see it, but then we didn't agree on time or
yeah,
something. So I just saw it. But I really liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think there's always a new way to take these stories. You know, if you're not adapting
have to
something
check
that's
that out.
super current, there's always a new way to take it, and there's always a new way for a studio to make money off of a story. That's why it really happens. That's why they make a new Robin Hood movie, because it's a fun story that they're going to make money with.
People like that story.
True. And it doesn't hurt that there's no ownership rights over a lot of those, like Shakespeare stories and stuff. So
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Makes it
public
pretty
domain
easy.
stuff.
Yeah.
Do we get sick of those stories though? I mean, do any of you guys get sick of those same stories?
No,
Or
Not
tired?
yet.
and every version of it's a reimagining. They just go off on their own story on that, and
Yeah,
sometimes
this
they're
Guy
really
Ritchie
good, sometimes they're
version
not.
of King Arthur was absolutely ridiculous. It was completely.
But it was fun.
Yeah.
It was a good time. I had a good time.
Oh,
Yeah, I did remember a review where that's what they said they had a good time with the movie.
A lot of people hated it, to be honest.
Well, when I saw the trailer, I was like, "Is this going to end up like those Hercules movies that came out in the same year?" That was like my first thought, and I'm like, so I need to check that out if it's fun. I want to check it out.
All right, I think we got to wrap this up, but just really quick, I did a Facebook post 2 years ago, and I asked what is an example. So this is kind of from a layman perspective. What are some general feelings about adaptations? What do you think was a successfully adapted book to film? Is what I asked. People said Anne of Green Gables was one. That's one that I love a lot.
Really good.
Lord of the Rings, of course.
The PBS stuff, right? Is that the movie?
I don't know if it's PBS.
or
It's
it was
Canadian.
the
It's like the Canadian
thing.
PBS.
Yeah, it was
basically.
showed on PBS. So.
Yeah, but yeah, it's really good. It's the Sullivan film. People said Harry Potter, which some are better than others. I think I would actually like them to redo the Harry Potter adaptations at some point and just do it again, because I think that would be fun. Because you could. So someone said the BBC Pride and Prejudice that Brett mentioned, that's like 6 hours long. It's a really good adaptation, but it's super long. Someone said Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Oh,
I need to check
see
that out.
Yeah,
I
me too.
said
Let's watch that sometime.
We
Eric.
should.
my friend Colton Birch said True Grit, the Coen versions, or the Coen brothers version, which I think we saw together, Brett.
Yeah, and that's almost like there's the book, the John Wayne movie, and then that movie, which is like, it plays off the John Wayne one too. So it's kind of like,
It's like a double adaptation.
Yeah.
Kind of.
That's cool.
He said The Godfather, No Country for Old Men, which is
Yeah,
one I've
that's-
talked about a lot. That's a really good
Yeah, I
adaptation.
saw that as an adaptation. I'm like, oh wow.
To Kill a Mockingbird is coming up from my mother. The Scarlet Pimpernel is coming up from my mother as well, which is
she
a
read
great
the book.
adaptation.
Yeah,
she liked the movie a lot more than the book.
Fantastic.
It was a really good adaptation.
Oh.
Actually, Amanda says she agrees with a lot of the above answers, but she'd have to add holes to that.
You really love holes.
What do you know?
No, it's
Someone
fine.
says Red Fern Grow, where the red fern grows. Hunger Games. I liked the movies better than the books. Honestly.
Oh, and that's
the
actually
books were super boring.
In my
to me.
notes, I forgot to bring that up. The books were boring
Yes.
from what I read. Like the first book, I got through it, then I couldn't get through the second one.
Oh, there's a Little Princess, which was Alfonso Cuarón. He did that movie. It's really, really good adaptation. I mean, there's another one at least
was
of a
very
Little
good.
Princess, but that was a really good version. So Alfonso Cuarón, he did the third Harry Potter movie and some other things, but very artistic director. The Narnia movies were mentioned. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas was mentioned. I mean, there's a lot. I could go on. There's like 50 different comments, but I'll leave it at that because we've covered a lot. But I just wanted to give you kind of more of a general audience feel of what are some good adaptations.
One more though, can I say one more before we wind up? Is that I feel like they did this one really poorly and then they went back and kind of fixed it. Is the series of unfortunate events. I talk a lot about like the juvenile fiction because that's kind of where my life is, teaching 5th grade, and that's what I end up getting to read a lot because we read during school. But the movie adaptation was pretty bad, and it combined 3 books into one, and it just wasn't good enough. Yeah, he
Jim
was a great
Carrey
Count Olaf,
It was
but
funny, but
Yeah.
I remember
movie
watching
itself
that, and I
just,
don't
no.
remember much of it. I didn't read the
right,
books.
it certainly is. But if you get on Netflix and watch this series, you know it's really well done, and yeah, they respect the books a lot, so I liked that. That's all.
Yeah, that is a problem when they do adaptations where they'll put combined books, and you're like, you don't need to combine 3 books to make one movie. They already have a good story.
If you have to choose between those two things, like splitting Holes up into 3 movies or combining 3 books into one movie, I'd rather go the Holes direction. But I mean,
Splitting it up,
ideally, splitting it up and doing more rather than doing less.
Condensing.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of times you have to condense
Yeah.
books
Yeah,
to film,
it's
right?
true. But if you have to choose between the two, I would do the harder.
I think sometimes they break up the books into multiple movies just because they want to do multiple movies. Like The Hobbit being an example there, and that kind of bugs me. And I don't know if the last Hunger Games thing needed. I mean, maybe it needed to be broken up.
It doesn't. You know, there's a lot of things that don't need to, but it's a money grab. They know people will go see it. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And that is the honest truth. There's nothing more to it than that it's a money grab. Harry Potter 7, I mean, you could split that up, sure. But it's a money grab. 8 movies, right?
Yeah.
You always that was such a I think they backed off that a little bit, but that was such a thing to do back then, was split the final movie into 2. Because I know you've invested 6 movies before, so of course you're going to watch the 7th and the 8th, right?
Except for the Divergent series where they decided to cut the 3rd movie into half and didn't do well, then now we're left with no ending.
Yeah, I mean, you have to...
They did disservice to us because
The
of
thing
it.
is, the source material on that wasn't that good to begin with, from my understanding.
The books, I mean, they strayed, from my understanding, so far from the books that it almost felt like it was a different series than what you were reading.
I never read them.
I didn't either, but I wasn't impressed enough with it to give it a shot. It's just going off the Hunger Games hype is what I felt like
really
it was doing.
That's exactly how I felt about it as well.
So I have one last thing about this, kind of a message. So with adaptations, don't be so harsh on the movie. Just realize, books are better, but the movie is there to show you.
Oh, he's laid it down. Books are better.
There's nothing that bothers me more than that argument. It was when people say the book was better, the adaptation wasn't like the book. It can't be like the book.
No, exactly.
It's a different medium. It's a different storytelling medium. You have to make it different.
I'm
You
just
have
saying
to.
we should read more, but don't be so critical of the movie because, once again, adapt means to make something suitable for a new use or purpose. So that's what they're doing with the movie. They're just trying to make a new use. So if it doesn't live up to the book, don't be angry. Just enjoy it try and see it just as a movie.
Yeah, I disagree a little bit because I think you should be critical. I think you should look at a movie and have high expectations for things, but those expectations should not be that the movie should equal the book.
Yeah.
It should be that it should be a great adaptation. That's it.
So keep reading books, keep seeing movies, and you guys have a good day.
All right, so this is a
And
wrap.
follow us.
And so you can get a hold of us. We want to know what you think about adaptations. So please Email us at geeknerdtangent@gmail.com. Hit us up on Facebook /geeknerdtangent. You can contact us at geeknerdtangent on both Twitter and Instagram. We have a voicemail line, 801.
769-6668.
And with Instagram, we have some good pictures. Follow us on Instagram to see what we do, funny things we like to post.
See how tan Brett didn't get.
Yeah.
And
See our trip to the dump.
Yeah. Just check
And
us out on
if
social
you haven't
media.
listened to mine and my wife's, Chelsea, our review for Incredibles 2, it's up now, so you can listen to that.
and thank you, Amanda, for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
thank you.
I'm excited to talk about going to the dump. Excited to talk about